I'm Patrick Pacheco. Coming up on Theater, All the Moving Parts, a chat with Hugh Barnett, who, as the house manager of the Majestic Theatre, is responsible for making sure you have a safe, comfortable, and rewarding experience. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Theater, All the Moving Parts. Think of the house manager of a Broadway theater as a major domo, the highest person of a household staff who makes sure that everything runs smoothly. That is the task of Hugh Barnett, the house manager of the Majestic Theatre, the home of Phantom of the Opera. It's his call to open the doors to the public, and from then on, anything goes. And he handles it all.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Phantom of the Opera. The house is now open.
Welcome, Hugh. And your job is nothing but moving parts.
Absolutely.
The number one priority for the house manager has been defined as the care, comfort, and safety of the audience. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I would say primarily we are there in a customer service mode to make sure that our paying patrons come in and have an enjoyable time. To have an enjoyable time behind the scenes, it has to be safe. And we have to make sure that it's comfortable. And then we are there to adjust, and help them with any issues that they may have.
In general, I suppose you're responsible for everything that is in what is called front of the house, anything in front of the curtain, and the stage manager, with whom I think you have a lot of communication with,
I do.
Is responsible for everything behind the curtain. Is that basically it?
Basically. However, I always like to, house manager, you must know a little about a lot of things. So that pertains to actually the physical part of the building. So what you said is true, but then there is a lot of issues, particularly these buildings are over 100 years old. So it's the maintenance of the buildings, and things arise particularly fun when the show is on.
When it comes to safety, I suppose the most important thing is fire safety.
Correct.
You have a number of padlocks, do you not, on a board?
No.
That you account for? Is that an old-fashioned thing that I picked up?
That is old-fashioned, yes. The New York City Fire Department is very proactive. I've actually worked, Schubert owns a theater outside of New York, and I was surprised at the difference in the monitoring from that local fire department. So that was removed about 10, 15 years ago.
And so what's the protocol in terms of fire safety? Obviously, you have to unlock all the doors and account for all the doors, fire doors being unlocked, so that if anything happens, people can get out fast.
Well, actually, that's not quite true.
Oh.
Yes.
All right.
So for public safety and for the safety of firemen, there are no locks on the doors. All the doors are, from the inside, they're open. You can push and it's free and clear. So I think where you're going, if I may,
yes,
is one of the first things I do when I come in is check all the egresses. And it's to make sure that nothing is blocking the egress. And it could be on the fire escape, it could be on the street, and many of our theaters, such as the Majestic, have a shared alley. And there could be things from other theaters, there could be cast members that put a bicycle in the alley. So that's the first thing we check.
What are the qualities that make a good house manager?
Well, first and foremost, you really have to be a people person. You have to like people, you have to be able to be empathetic and understand their concerns. And then you have to be very detail-oriented, because the other part of the job is administrative, and boy, over the years, that has really grown.
And I gather that patience is really essential. And being able to negotiate.
Yes.
Obviously, with COVID, the question of masks have come up.
Correct.
What is the percentage of people that cooperate and have no problem with wearing their masks?
Oh, 99.95. I mean, it's very minimal. The only issues that arise are confusion when they started having vaccinations available for children, and if it was they're stopped before they even come into the theater by the COVID safety team. Inside the theater, that same safety team patrols, and every once in a while they will find a patron where the mask is below their nose. And we are very adamant that it must cover the nose. We want everyone to feel safe and secure.
How often do your ushers come up and down the aisles making sure that that is maintained?
Well, they observe even before COVID. They observe generally from the sides. We don't want them to be, intruding on the pleasure of the patrons. We don't want them in their sight lines in any way, shape, or form, but they can look and they can check on the sides. So they do that on a regular basis.
And have you ever had to deal with anybody obstreperous in the 0.5 who have a problem with masks? Is it zero tolerance?
Well, again, we're in a service business. So we try, as you say, to negotiate with people and explain to them the need that they must follow not only the theater rules, but this is an ordinance of the city of New York. And we give them 2 opportunities. And then at the third, we explain that security will have to come by if they can't adhere to the regulations in the theater. And there's only been one instance since these protocols have been in place that we've actually had to eject someone.
How many security guards do you have in the theater that can answer these questions, answer to these situations?
There are 3 that are assigned to the theater, as well as the Schubert organization has its own security department, so they supplement. So depending on the size of the crowd, during the walk-in and the let-out, we'll have additional people.
I suppose you show up, or actually your job sort of starts 30 minutes before the curtain rises. It may be before that, but you have a staff. How many answer to you? That includes ushers, porters, perhaps maintenance, cleaning people, and ticket takers, box office as well?
Yes. I mean, if we take everyone in, it's really 119, but the way that it's divided, the Schubert organization, each company has their own way of divvying up responsibilities. And the box office nominally falls under the house manager's purview, but in actuality, Schubert owns telecharge, and they kind of fall in and work with the main office.
How do you keep the box office line moving fast and efficiently?
Yeah. Well, at times that could be an issue. We have porters in the lobby. Again, each theater is different. Some have larger lobbies than others. And it also depends on the show. So Phantom of the Opera, particularly pre-COVID, had a very large out-of-town and foreign audience, and many of them either were picking up tickets at the box office or had issues because they procured them possibly from sources that may not be legitimate.
A counterfeit ticket.
Yes.
And what do you do in that case? They show up and they have a ticket, and the ticket taker says, you got scammed. What do you do?
So they'll refer them to the box office, where the box office literally will do everything in their power to try and assist the patron. Unfortunately, we now live in a day where the technology exists that scammers, the level of scams are from absolutely false tickets to manipulating the tickets now that they have QR codes, barcodes, and they could actually make a ticket that was the last row seem like it was the 6th row in the orchestra. And so the box office tries to get to the bottom of it, see what is legitimate. Yeah. And on some occasions, unfortunately, we have to explain to them we can't let them in because the production, not the theater owner, the production did not receive revenue for the ticket. And then we suggest they contact their credit card company to get a refund. And
what happens if they get the right performance, wrong date?
Well, in that instance, our number one priority is trying to get them into the house. Mm-hmm. There are occasions when it's just impossible because we're sold out. But even on occasion where we are near capacity, but if we have seats that are left that we call emergencies, we will give them the emergencies, and we want to accommodate the patron.
How do you accommodate people, your patrons with disabilities, people that come in wheelchairs?
That is a very interesting question because there isn't a set wheelchair size. They come in all shapes and sizes.
Interesting.
So the theaters some time ago were retrofitted to make specific areas available where we could take seats out to accommodate in the orchestra section, wheelchairs. Now, Phantom of the Opera, it's a little more difficult at the Majestic because the show has been playing 34 years. And over the years, the government has expanded the amount of space required for wheelchairs. So we have the initial requirement. In the future, we would like to make it even larger. Just the other day, we had 2 wheelchairs come in. It was a couple side by side. We've had requests for people to find a discrete spot in the building that at intermission that they could receive various medical assistance by an attendant and plug in oxygen. So it comes in various shapes and sizes, and we try and accommodate every one of them.
What are the protocols that you put in place when VIPs appear? When Michelle Obama, say, comes with an entourage and her family, her kids?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, as I mentioned, the Schubert organization has its own security department. And you have to delineate between a public VIP, that is someone that would have, for instance, Secret Service or State Department security. And in those instances, they usually do a walkthrough of the theater beforehand to see where the emergency exits are, to look at the layout of the theater, and we accommodate them. They are permitted to stay in the theater and discreetly. Now, we have, of course, VIPs who are celebrities. Mm-hmm. In that instance, we're happy to accommodate them, but if they wish to have security, their security needs to purchase a ticket.
Mm-hmm. And obviously at intermission, they want to you need to control the crowds in terms of people getting to them.
When I was subbing at one of our other theaters, Denzel Washington was there. And that's the fun of working for Schubert that has so many theaters, and they're all close together. So I accompanied him. I suggested he leave the building. We walked across the street, and we saw Hugh Jackman just walk in there when he was doing The Boy from Oz.
Great.
Yeah.
A power couple.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually a lot of fun.
You give the signal to the stage manager, everything is cool, you can start the show.
Yes, we're good. You can start the show. All right, I'll see you later. All right.
Delays. What are some of the reasons for the delays? You also know exactly how many tickets have been sold for any performance, and you know how many people have not been seated. Correct?
That is correct. That has evolved over the years. When I started, we still had hard tickets. Mm-hmm. They weren't computer generated tickets, they weren't e-tickets, they weren't tickets with the QR code. So as you stated, the ticket takers have a scanner. They can easily tell me how many have come in and how many we're still waiting for. If there is a line, we will not start the show when we have the paying public waiting to get in. The only hard and fast rule is we want to accommodate the paying public, and once the line is broken, and the people have an opportunity to get to their seats, that's when we start.
Do you give a break if there's a wintry night, if weather could cause delays? Do you give them another 5 minutes to get there because of the weather?
In that instance, again, it depends on the line. And there would normally be a long line because people arrive late, and obviously, as I just stated, we wait to that to break. But if the line is broken, we just start.
How do you accommodate latecomers? Because that can get people really upset.
Indeed. That is an ongoing major issue. So most shows have what is referred to as a seating hold. So at the beginning of Phantom of the Opera, for instance, once the show initially starts, that's a quiet scene. So we close the doors and do not let people in for a few minutes. They are out in the lobby. Other than that, when latecomers come in, of course, their COVID vaccination card is checked before they come in. They are scanned in, and then at the appropriate time, and every usher knows when that time is, they take them to the top of the aisle, and they wait to the appropriate time to seat them.
Does anybody ever rush down without waiting, and you have to deal with that?
Yes, yes. And, sometimes you just have to let it go. We're not in the business of being right. We're in the business of accommodating people and making sure they have a good time.
In terms of the comfort, obviously the number of bodies kind of determines where the temperature gauge is. And you're always going to get people that come to you and say, the theater's too cold. Other people are going to come to you and say, the theater's too hot.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
It is an issue. It's an ongoing. More so, I would say, in the summertime when we have the air conditioning on, and they're large, cavernous buildings, and you're going to have the airflow. We do try and adjust it, however, particularly for patrons who are sitting under the mezzanine overhang. That is on a separate zone. We can cut back, and obviously we have to accommodate everyone, the paying public, but also the actors. And if the actors are wearing heavy costumes, you can't let them be sweating on the stage. So it's a balancing act.
Katharine Hepburn was famous for keeping the theater at 60 degrees.
Yes.
So you can imagine how many complaints the house manager got for that.
And let's not forget about Lena Horne.
Who also kept it very low.
No,
very warm.
At the Nederlander Theater, when she did her very iconic run, no air conditioning.
Wow.
Yes.
Whoa, boy.
Yes.
No wonder everybody was sweating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so I come in and I'm vertically challenged. So I sit down and there is a huge head in front of me. And maybe they're even wearing a hat or something, right?
Yes. So to answer your question that I'm anticipating, I literally, when I was at the Broadhurst Theater managing many years ago, had a patron come to me basically with the very same problem, except she added that the person was wearing some kind of hairpiece and could we ask them to remove it. So obviously we want to accommodate the patron. And if we have available seats, it is something we do all the time.
If it's SRO?
If it's SRO, there's not much we can do.
Maybe give them a booster seat?
But then the patron behind them can't see. So there is the issue. So we definitely try and accommodate, even when it's SRO, as you indicated before, sometimes people with tickets don't show up. And if that's the case, they're referred to as uncollected. If we have uncollected, we look at the availability and then try and move the patron.
And I guess we should say SRO is standing room only, which
Indeed.
Every theater on Broadway really wants to be at all performances.
And I'm happy to say pre-COVID, Phantom usually was.
Good, get that plug in. You get that plug in.
Absolutely.
Cell phones must be the bane of your existence. What do you do, especially if it's persistent?
Here's the issue. It's not the phones ringing. That's passé. That really isn't an issue. Cell phones are little computers. The issue is, particularly with a show like Phantom that was getting a large international audience, it's the bright screen that is disturbing to everyone around them.
Oh.
And so that's people checking their text messages, their emails, maybe on social media. So that is the true issue. And the ushers go down, and many times you can have this that could be the first row. And they have to squat down so as not to disturb other people, but is something that is a major issue in the theaters, but we address it.
What do you do? How do you address it?
They tell them to turn their phone off.
Who does? The usher?
The usher does.
The usher does. And do they generally obey? And do you get to a point where they disobey so much that the usher has to eject them?
Well,
or take. I suppose you're not allowed to confiscate the cell phone.
No, we are not, and it is not up to an usher. We would never. That's the last thing we want to do is eject a patron. We want, as you said earlier, to negotiate and make sure everyone has an enjoyable time. So they'll make me aware of it, and it's something that we'll try and figure a solution. And yes, there are many occasions where they have to be spoken to multiple times, but generally we come to a happy
Medium.
Yes.
Another thing in the theater that needs to be shared is the armrest. And frequently, it's something that bothers me if somebody just invades my space. Have you had a problem with people squabbling over that?
It's very rare. Generally, the issues are young children behind them kicking the seat, people talking incessantly, and they won't be, then people get into arguments, and at times it can just turn into childish behavior. So we try and mediate the issue, and if it becomes really bad, again, we separate the parties and just move people.
Move people.
Yeah.
That's actually a good solution.
Yeah.
Medical emergencies. Obviously, they can happen. They do happen.
Yes, they do.
What are the logistics there? What are you prepared to do the minute somebody says help?
Right. So obviously, we have had over the years every manner of emergencies, trying to make a determination. Sometimes the patron may downplay it and we think it's more serious. In any case, the private security that we have are law enforcement individuals, so they have some background in it. I also noted that the Schubert organization has its own security department. So both of those entities are contacted, the people on site, private security. We contact the base, as we call it, for our security department. The ushers first inform me, and we try and ascertain what the patron may need. It may be as simple as needing ice, because they may have twisted an ankle.
Lady E3 fell in the rear mezzanine.
Aye.
Do we have ice packs?
Oh, I can get from backstage.
Okay.
It is up to the patron, unless it is something so severe that we, and this is unusual, have to override them and contact we are fortunate to have beat cops, and they come as well and call an ambulance. And then the most important thing is when we call 911 for an ambulance is follow their instructions, generally have them lay flat, whatever the issue may be, provide ice, and the number one thing is to remain calm.
You got to be prepared for
everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Have you ever had occasion to yell, "Is there a doctor in the house?"
No.
No, never did.
No.
Never did.
In many instances, when there was a medical emergency, depending on the severity, I have had nurses and I have had doctors volunteer that they saw that something was going on and they've come to assist. Absolutely.
I wanted to back up just a little bit to ushers. What makes a good usher?
Someone who can actually has common sense. As simple as that may seem, has common sense, can think on their feet, and is willing to take upon themselves to try and solve the issue, whatever it may be. One of the very last things we wish, and one of my biggest bugaboos, is to have a paying patron being shuffled from person to person, from usher to director, who is the director of the ushers, and then down to me. A patron should not have to go around looking for assistance.
What do you do when a patron is overserved? What do you do when...
This is an issue. Yeah, this is an issue. Most of the time, unfortunately, patrons will come in already inebriated. And when that happens, we make note of where their seats are. And the ushers keep an eye to make sure they're not disturbing people. And the happiest solution is they pass out.
And then you just cart them out?
Well, no, they usually wake up at the end of the show.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We have to wrap up. If somebody out there would love to do your job, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, I'm very happy and proud to say, get in the theater any way you can, be an usher. There are ushers in the Schubert organization, the Niederlander organization, that have been promoted over time in apprenticeship programs to be Broadway theater managers.
There are apprenticeship programs with every theater owner?
I believe so, yeah.
So
it's
they're-
through the union. It is through the manager.
ATPAM?
Yes, through ATPAM, the manager's
Through
union.
ATPAM, so they can apply to ATPAM if they want.
It's a little convoluted. It is through the theater owner, and they work hand in glove with the union. But working in the theater, having hands-on experience is the best experience.
Right. And know every aspect of it,
Absolutely.
as you yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I will leave you with sage advice that was told to me by a friend who recently passed away, and that is one of the Niederlander brothers. So he passed away at 93, and he told me his father told him, you have to know how to sweep the stage before you run the stage.
Very good. And the most rewarding aspect of your job to you?
Oh, my God. The most rewarding is young children and their enthusiasm, but also when you can assist someone, whether they recently had an injury and they're in crutches and they're 3 flights up and they're going to go, and you stop them and no, we're going to assist you and find seats.
Wonderful. That's a great note to end on, Hugh. I can't thank you enough for being our guest on this show, and thanks for that treasure trove of knowledge about managing the house.
Thank you. My pleasure, Patrick.
Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next month with another look at the expert and singular professionals who are helping theater, that fabulous invalid, regain its invaluable place in American culture. I'm Patrick Pacheco.